Part 69. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 682. What? You still have to wash your hands. Where can I find time to wash my hands? The midwives exploded on the spot. In the delivery room, 6 or 7 midwives screamed at the same time and complained. Where can I find the time? Day after day, we are busy without even touching the ground. After taking this job, we take another job. There is no time to take a breath, and we are still asked to change clothes. Do we not want to change clothes? Who wants to dress dirty and feel uncomfortable? Have you given us clothes to change? Have you given us time to wash our hands? We can deliver at most 1 baby a day outside, but here we have to pick up 5 or 6 babies a day. We also have to take a shower, wash hands, and change clothes. Who can handle this? Beside the nearest delivery bed, a midwife with a floral cloth covering her head and an extraordinarily fat figure reacted the most intensely. She cut the umbilical cord with a click, and then turned around like a whirlwind. Holding the child covered in blood and mucus, he angrily threw it into Greet's arms. Then take it. I'm going to wash my hands. How dare you? Why are you talking to Master Spellcaster? Before Greet could answer, a middle-aged woman wearing a long tartan skirt and a white skirt had already stood out from the crowd behind her. With a scolding, he immediately put on a smile and went to pick up the child from Greet's hand. Sir, please don't be angry. These midwives are a bunch of bastards. You don't need to be familiar with them. Hey, old Nina is the best midwife here. She can reach into a pregnant woman's belly and turn the fetus upside down. It's inevitable that she will have a bad temper. I'll do it. Hug, let me hug you. What? Spellcaster. The midwife had already rushed over to wash her hands. When she heard the shouting from behind, her whole body froze. Gretel coughed. You go about your business and we'll talk about other things later. At the same time, he raised his elbows and gently blocked the hands of the head midwife. He summoned a floating saucer, placed the child on it, and then threw a bunch of spells. Cleaning technique. Clean the umbilical cord. Clean blood, amniotic fluid, and fetal fat from newborns. Treat minor injuries. Treat umbilical cord wounds. Cold and heat resistant. Keep your newborn warm. Then the mage's hand flew out and gently patted the solace of the newborn's feet. Seeing him burst into tears, he threw himself a second cleaning technique to clean his hands and clothes. Well, what else is there to do? It seems that there is no more. Next, registering the baby and taking it back to the mother are all the midwife's business. Greet pushed the floating saucer aside and looked around. The midwife threw the baby to him, quickly put her hands in the bucket, shook them hard twice, and wiped her palms on the cloth next to her. Then, she immediately knelt down in front of the mother, giving her full attention, apparently waiting to handle the placenta. On the other 5 delivery beds in the delivery room, women were moaning and screaming. 3 of the delivery beds were surrounded by 2 midwives on each side, together with the one who just threw the baby over, who were so busy that they were sweating profusely and turning their heads to look at themselves from time to time. The remaining midwives ran around the 3 delivery beds and 20 wards to check on the conditions of the pregnant women. There was wind underfoot, and not a single person stopped to take a rest. Well, actually this midwife is pretty good. After she threw the baby over, she still went to take care of the mother, didn't she? Even if she was scolded, even if she heard that she was a spellcaster and was so scared that her movements were stiff, her attention was still focused on the mother. Among the midwives in the entire delivery room, she was the most attentive. But it's really unacceptable that the delivery room is not clean. The whole room was filled with blood, stench, and a smell that came from God knows where. The midwives' hands, clothes, and even their headscarves are all stained with something unspeakable. What a ghost, Puerperal fever breaks out over a large area, it only takes a matter of minutes. Where are the people? Gretel began to look around. Where's the cleaning guy? I'm coming. Immediately two poor women rushed in with buckets to mop the floor. Greet stood in the delivery room for another 30 seconds, feeling so smoked that she couldn't stand it anymore. Seeing that none of the 6 women were in danger, they turned around and left. Quickly walked through the corridor between the wards, looking left and right. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are only 4 midwives in 20 wards, plus 2 or 3 maids walking around, constantly paying attention to the conditions of pregnant women. There aren't enough manpower at all. Gretel finally understood what the problem was. He said that with the same number of midwives, Oak Grove Hospital can operate normally because there are enough nurses, as well as cleaners who do odd jobs, security guards who help carry people, and all-powerful skeleton soldiers. He walked around Ziobai building and Kyangwei building again to confirm the number of nurses in the hospital. Return to the office building and grab Lord Graf immediately. Recruit people. Hurry up and recruit people. These people are simply not enough. According to 10 beds and 4 nurses, we need to recruit at least 24 more. Well, let's hire more, and we have to change shifts. After thinking about it, the logistics staff also had to be added. As well as security guards, cleaners, workers who wash clothes and sheets, and workers who burn boilers and disinfect sheets, they all need to expand their recruitment. I leave you to decide how many. Also, equip them with waterproof surgical gowns, at least 3 sets per person per day. Lord Graf tried hard to maintain his aristocratic demeanor and tried not to show the embarrassment on his face. On the other side of the conference table, Mr. Dodge, the hospital's financial officer, has begun to object fiercely. Your Excellency, Master. The hospital doesn't have that much money. This hospital is still running on the kindness of Her Majesty the Queen, and it is almost breaking even. If we recruit people according to your requirements, the hospital will lose at least 100 gold coins every month. Just 100 gold coins. Without blinking an eye, Greet threw out several books of arcane and magic, as well as a price list. Attract rich people here. Let them know that giving birth at Her Majesty's hospital can eliminate pain and avoid danger. I'll leave it to you to do exactly that, Mr. Dodge. Just advertise in newspapers, go to various clubs and banquets to spread the news. As long as you have authorization, I'm not afraid to make the business bigger. Mr. Dodge left with the journal in his pocket, and the next day, the relevant advertisement was published in the largest newspaper in the capital, The Sun. So, that Mage Nordmark has arrived in the royal capital. On the outskirts of the royal capital, in a historic mansion, a pale hand opened the newspaper and gently shook the corner of the paper. In front of the speaker, the valet quickly bent down and whispered. Yes, I met the Queen yesterday and it was said that the meeting was quite pleasant. Well, should we wait a moment? For now the speaker pondered for a moment, and subconsciously twisted the newspaper with his right thumb and index finger, rolled it up and then smoothed it, and then rolled it up. He has just arrived in the royal capital, and the Queen is paying a lot of attention to him. Now is not the time. Let's cause him some trouble first and let everyone think of him and say bah. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 683. It was early morning on the 3rd day Greet took over the hospital. Your Excellency the Mage. Your Excellency the Mage Nordmark. Bang 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 bang, the door was knocked loudly. Greet sat up from the bed and shouted back. What's up? There are so many pregnant women at the door. All of them are staying at the door, dragging their families with their families. Some pregnant women are about to give birth. Go and have a look. After hearing the first sentence, Gretel had completely woken up. Upon hearing the second sentence, he jumped out of bed barefoot and began to quickly put on clothes for himself. When he heard the third sentence, he didn't even have time to wash his face or brush his teeth. He threw a cleansing spell on his face and opened the door. "Are all the hospital beds full?" "It's all full." The man at the door looked anxious and sweating profusely. "All the midwives are busy, they are overwhelmed." "Go and have a look." Gretel glanced at him. His face was familiar, but he couldn't name him. He only knew that he was a staff member who had been introduced a few days ago. But Greet still knew the consequences of being blocked by a large group of pregnant women and giving birth every minute without being able to treat them. If a pregnant woman had a miscarriage in front of the hospital, or even killed 2 people, the hospital would not accept her. If public anger is aroused, the hospital can be shut down. At this time, the doors to the left and right had been opened, and the people Greet had brought from Nevis poked their heads out one after another. Greet ran out and shouted to them. "Go and help. Go to the ward to help first. Open the operating room. Appa." The last sentence's voice suddenly rose in pitch. There was a deer cry in the distance, and the silver moon deer galloped over, turned its head and picked up Greet on the deer's back. Gretel leaned forward and grasped the antlers. "Go to the gate. Quick." The sound of hooves was heard, as dense as the pelting rain, and he rushed towards the entrance of the hospital. The level 8 monster ran with all its strength, as fast as a silver light, and stopped at the gate of the hospital in a moment. Faces full of pain, worry, and hope immediately turned towards him. "Sir, let us go in. My mother-in-law is giving birth. It hurts so much, ah." Greet looked up and saw that there were carts, wheelbarrows, or 2 or 3 people supporting a pregnant woman on the road, spreading a piece of clothing and barely sitting on the ground. The long queue stretched to both sides of the hospital entrance. At a glance, there were more than 20 or 30 groups. At the gate, 4 security guards linked arms to keep the crowd out and kept shouting. "Stop crowding, stop crowding. All the hospital beds are full. We can't take anyone in. There's no one to take care of the babies. Go home quickly. Find a midwife you are familiar with. The longer we stay here, the greater the trouble will be in the future." Noisy and crowded, people's blood pressure will rise just by looking at them. From a distance, there seemed to be people watching in the alley, but the alley was too narrow and dark to see clearly. Is this really useful? In the alley, a man wearing a dark gray cloak with a hood covering half of his face was asking in a low voice. Next to him, another man pressed his felt hat on his head and bent down. "It must be useful. My second daughter-in-law asked a midwife she knew well. There are only 20 wards in total, and they are all full. They can't fit them in, so they can only hang them outside to dry. In the eyes of others, it's obvious you just don't care about the life or death of pregnant women. Irrelevant people, who has nothing to do to come and see. Don't worry, sir. I have contacted the reporters and painters from the Daily Express. They will be here in a while. If I see this, I will definitely publish a big article." Gretel was far away from these whispers, so it was naturally impossible to hear them. He was just surprised. Why are there so many suddenly? Greet frowned. I quickly started calculating in my mind. The Royal Maternity and Infant Hospital, a maternity ward facing the poor, has 60 beds. Counting labor, observation, and connections, the average length of stay for each mother is 3 days. In other words, 20 hospital beds will be vacant every day. The population of the royal capital is similar to that of Nevis, around 1 million people. If the birth rate is similar, about 40,000 people are born every year, which averages to a little more than 100 people every day. These 100 people will be digested by various temples, all midwives, and those who are too poor to give birth at home. The maternal and infant hospital has 20 beds per day, and the reception capacity is more than enough. So, how come the number of people visiting the hospital suddenly doubled? The maternity hospital is not an infectious disease hospital, and the number of patients will not suddenly increase. If it is due to newspaper advertisements, the people who come should be the middle class who are literate and able to read, not the poor people now. But now is not the time to pursue this. Greet urged the silver moon deer to gallop back and forth in front of the queue of pregnant women, already knowing something in her mind. Less than 30, no problem. Got it? Appa, let's go back, and then you take care of them. Throw healing spells on those pregnant women to make them last longer. He patted the silver moon deer. Appa turned around and returned, put Greet at the entrance of the administration building, and rushed back to the hospital gate again. Gretel took a deep breath and began to direct. Extra beds. Extra beds immediately. Add one bed to each ward, and then add another bed in the corridor. Mr. Dodge, the financial controller, grimaced, but before he could speak, Gretel shouted at him. Move out all the bed frames in stock. If there are not enough, take the beds in everyone's bedrooms for emergency use first, starting with my bed. If there are not enough, just lay out straw mats and mattresses, and then go out to buy them immediately. Mr. Dodge bowed and immediately rushed out with the logistics manager to get busy. Greet turned to the chief midwife. Take all the mothers in, set up a pre-examination table at the door, and ask old Nina to bring the most experienced midwife over to check all the mothers with Joanna. If it's not urgent at the moment, we'll send him to the ward. If he's urgent, he'll be sent to the delivery room. If it's dangerous, he'll be sent to the operating room. Inform Cyrilla to get ready and start the operation immediately. Isn't it just 30? The extra bed can be easily accommodated. When the obstetrics and gynecology department was the most stressful in my previous life, extra beds were added to the corridor, and the observation room of the emergency department was crowded with flat cars and recliners. I have seen that kind of scene more than once. Fortunately, he was not busy these 2 days. Orders were given to recruit people, and midwives from Kyangwei Building and Ziobai Building were transferred to help. They were trained in the 7-step hand-washing method and strictly required aseptic operation standards, which established a certain prestige. With an order, the hospital began to spin with a rumble. By the time reporters and painters from the Daily Express arrived, only the silver moon deer was left pacing back and forth in front of the hospital. The family members of the mother are in clusters, and they are looking forward to it. And the reason that attracted them here, those pregnant women who were said to have been turned away by the hospital, have all disappeared. Aren't you saying that the hospital here is treating human life with indifference, turning away pregnant women and leaving them dead and dead? The reporter crawled out of Wenro village early in the morning, feeling a little unhappy. In addition, he invited a painter to come over as a favor, but failed to do so. He became more and more resentful, grabbed the messenger and shouted, "Where are the people? It's all taken in, what's the use of just taking it in?" The man in the felt hat pressed the brim of his hat hard, used the felt hat to absorb the sweat from his forehead, and argued bravely. There are only so many midwives inside. There are only so many spellcasters. Taking people in, lying there and letting them struggle on their own, is considered taking them in. Otherwise, why not let the family members in? Wait and see if anyone is dead inside bar. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. In the last 4 days, I still have 200 monthly votes left, so I'm still a little panicked after doing the calculations. Keep praying for votes. I watched The Dragon Who Controls Time in the past 2 days. Well, it's my favorite Western fantasy theme, and it's a new dragon. I have an extra book of rations, Kaizen. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 684. The obstetrics and gynecology building was almost so busy. From the temporary shed set up at the entrance of the obstetrics building to the operating room in the deepest part of the obstetrics building, it was filled with steam. 2 midwives and a spellcaster formed a pre-inspection assembly line, shouting one after another. The cervix is dilated to the second finger. The water has not broken. Next one. The fetal position is normal. The placenta position is normal. Send to the ward for delivery. Next one. This water broke. Next one. Low amniotic fluid. Send to the operating room immediately. Next one. This. Bernard led the security guards in groups of 2, carrying the stretcher as they rushed. Those who should be sent to the ward are sent to the ward, and those who should be sent to the operating room are sent to the operating room. The casters worked non-stop, shuttling through 20 wards and a delivery room with 6 delivery beds, striving to ensure the life safety of every mother. Lord Graff and Mr. Dodge were outside the maternity building, directing the logistics operations, and the chief midwife was personally on the front line. And Greet stayed in the operating room. He and Cyrilla stood face to face, one was in charge of surgery, and the other was in charge of life monitoring spells and throwing healing spells. One lowered his head and focused his eyes on the surgical area, the other looked around, taking turns to look at the electrocardiogram, blood pressure and blood oxygen on the 3 light screens. After confirming that there is nothing wrong, he lowers his head and watches the movements of the mage's hands in the surgical area. Cut open the uterus, take out the child, clean the body and resume breathing, and remove the placenta. Cyrilla, I leave it to you. Okay. White light flashes. Hemostasis, anastomosis, complete healing layer by layer from the uterus to the peritoneum, to the muscles and skin. Next. Here we come, someone responded immediately at the door of the operating room. Lift the mother, hold the baby, and send her to the ward for temporary observation. The operating table was swept with cleaning techniques, wiped with disinfectant, and the next parturient was brought up. All added together, it takes no more than 20 minutes. Next. 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 Old Nina brought another experienced midwife with her to complete the preliminary screening with Joanna. When she turned around, 5 children had already been born. I rushed back to the delivery room, struggled to deliver the 2 children, and looked back. There is none left. Yeah, no more. The head midwife sat slumped at the door of the delivery room, lifted up her apron, and wiped the sweat off her forehead. He looked up at the clock on the wall, his eyes dull. This is the first time I've seen it go so fast, 1 in 20 minutes, 3 in an hour. After Pastor Joanna went in, 5 people could come out of the operating room in an hour. We have 6 beds, 12 people, and we can't do it even if we work hard. The 3 of them. Is this, the spellcaster? If Greet hears her question, he will definitely tell her that it has nothing to do with the spellcaster. It takes a long time to deliver a baby in the delivery room because the labor process is so long. Even if the cervix is dilated to the 10th finger before getting on the delivery bed, the second stage of labor can take up to 2 or 3 hours for first-time mothers, and it can take up to an hour for multiparous women. In the operating room, Greet can already perform an operation in 20 minutes. Pastor Joanna moves a little slower, but as long as it is not too difficult, she can complete an operation in half an hour. After all, in Greet's previous life, a successful cesarean section took only 15 to 20 minutes. Let the treatment move along the incision in a circle, which is much faster than stitching stitches one by one. Okay, stand up, Greet's shout came from the operating room within a few seconds. Clear, high-pitched, full of energy. Midwives, I need your help. Go and feel all the pregnant women. Those whose cervix is dilated to 8 or 9 fingers, arrange them in order and bring them up one by one. What? The midwives, who were completely exhausted, screamed. However, this is another strength of a cesarean section over a vaginal birth. A vaginal birth requires waiting for the body to function naturally, especially in the absence of oxytocin, while a cesarean section, its time is in the hands of the surgeon. In other words, midwives need to work day and night. They have to work whenever the mother is ready. This is also the hard part of obstetrics. And if everyone chooses cesarean section, the doctor can complete the operation during working hours and then go off work happily. Therefore, when doctors advise mothers to give birth naturally, they are actually sacrificing their own interests. Of course, the midwives present did not know these things. They just followed Greet's orders, propped up their aching bodies, and checked the mother's bed by bed. 5 fingers, wait a moment, it won't be your turn. 7 fingers, almost. 9 fingers. This opens to 9 fingers. Okay, bring it up right away, Greet replied loudly. As a result, the assembly line of examination, sending the pregnant woman, surgery, returning to the ward began to rotate again. So nothing happened inside yet. The sun rises from the eaves to the top of the head, and then sinks diagonally from the top of the head to the western eaves? Mr. Painter walked around the entrance of the hospital and left long ago. Only the tabloid reporter was left holding on to the man who invited him. Didn't you say there must be news? Where is the news? Where is the news? If it weren't for the big news, the bad things happening at Queen's Hospital, I wouldn't want to write about it. I told you it's not the Queen's Hospital. It's just the new controller. The man in the felt hat struggled to move his palm away. We are loyal to the Queen and are worried about her safety, so we want to expose the true face of the spellcaster. As for what happened, there are several healers inside. How can it be so fast? Even a hard hit with healing spells can kill you. It will definitely have to wait. First class. As soon as the noise reached this point, there was a sudden commotion among the mother's family members. The two of them looked for the sound and saw the large iron door of the hospital creaking open a crack, and a young man holding a note came out. John, he glanced at the note and shouted at the top of his lungs. Is John here? 3 Johns came forward from the family group. The man frowned. Your wife's name is Jenny. 3 Johns back too. The third one stepped forward quickly, his voice trembling. How's it going? Your wife gave birth. She gave birth to a son. 5.7 pounds. Both mother and son are safe. I'll pick him up early tomorrow morning. Ah, okay, okay. John nodded. He wanted to ask a few more questions, but the young man had already named the next one. Christopher. Christopher. Your wife gave birth to a daughter, weighing 6.3 pounds. I'll pick her up tomorrow morning too. Victor. The reporter listened carefully. Listen to a name, write it down on a piece of paper, hear another name, write it down again. When the young man returned to the door, he counted the names and said in shock. 53. In one day, 53 babies were delivered. None of them died. The man in the felt hat looked livid. They sent about 50 pregnant women in today. The big boss behind the scenes had already obtained a list of midwives in the city hall, and then coerced and induced them to send as many pregnant women as possible. This kind of thing makes too much noise. If you don't stop after 2 or 3 times, you will easily alarm someone who is interested. The maternity and infant hospital can easily handle so many pregnant women in one day. It seems that even if I come again a few times, nothing will happen there. Moreover, less than half of the people on the list just checked in were the mothers they had just sent in. In other words, people are not afraid at all. So, how should we deal with him next? He hesitated to look back and turned towards the depths of the alley. As soon as I turned around, I saw a silver-haired girl standing pretty in front of me. He put his hands behind his back and stared at them with a smile and curious eyes. "Hey, what are you doing here? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's the last 4 days, don't hold on to your remaining monthly passes. There are still 170 votes left, good idea. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right?" Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 685. After the cervix was dilated to more than 5 fingers and all other caesarean sections were performed, Gretel fell down on the floor of the operating room. Before rushing to the street, he used his last breath to ask Miss Yinlong to go out for a run. "Sarala, I always feel something is wrong with so many pregnant women coming here today. Go out and take a look and see if there is anyone suspicious outside." "Okay, leave it to me." Sarara used 2 fingers to hold the collar of his hand-washing gown and lay him flat on the operating table. Then, in a flash, he floated out of the operating room and disappeared. Gretel was left alone lying on the newly washed operating table, eyes closed, and not wanting to move his fingertips. Ah, so tired. He stood for a whole day and performed more than 30 caesarean sections in one go. It's not like there were times when life and death were like this, even during an operation. However, waiting for nurses and junior doctors to send the patient, disinfect and drape, anesthetize and sew the skin, etc. Before and after, you can always take a break. Unlike this time, I did it all in one go. Moreover, it is a double squeeze both physically and mentally. The hands of the sustaining mage are transformed into various surgical instruments, and the operation is performed for 10 hours continuously. Although the mental pressure is not violent, it is about the same as holding a reeling machine and continuously spinning silk. After the silk was drawn, the people fell down. I must get a lot of surgical instruments next time. He closed his eyes and hummed. I want to use real hemostats for surgery. I don't want to use the hands of a mage to turn them into hemostats, the battery life is too bad. As for the trouble of making and using these things, well, he has money now anyway, buy the steel and let the gremlin gold coins do it. Every time you disinfect something, you can throw it to others. Gretel was dying and half dead, but Sarara, who had undergone a 10-hour operation together, was walking briskly. She hummed a song, and as if there were springs under her feet, she ran to the hospital wall and jumped out. Tiptoeing, quietly, patrolling the nearby treetops and rooftops. There is no one here. Not here either. These are all slums, and there doesn't seem to be anyone suspicious, but the roof is not allowed to be stepped on. Oh, repair, repair, repair. Here. Got it? Sarala jumped off the ground proudly. With his hands behind his back, he showed off his power and stood in front of the 2 people. What are you doing here? At first glance, these 2 are not from the slums. Sneaking around, hiding in alleys, watching the hospital, whispering to each other, he must not be a good person. They are probably the ones Gretel wants to catch. The man in the felt hat shrank his pupils. This young lady was highlighted in the information he obtained: silver hair, pointed ears, elf race, very, very rich, her martial arts value is unknown but definitely not bad. You can't beat me by fighting, so how about escaping? The thought had only turned halfway when the reporter beside him had already taken a step back, his back pressed against the brick wall. Pointing to the tip of his nose, he shouted hoarsely. He came to me, I don't know anything. The man in the felt hat buzzed. Without thinking, he ran away. 1 step, 2 steps, a wave of coldness rolled up behind me, and before I could shiver, my eyes suddenly went dark. Zheng. At the last moment of his life, he seemed to hear the sound of a string, and then fell into eternal darkness. Oops. Sarala's eyes narrowed and she flew forward. Stretch your right hand forward, put your index and middle fingers together, and pinch hard in front of the man in the felt hat. The two fingers are cold and hard, and half-length needles reveal dark edges outside the knuckles. Sarala's breath tightened. She took a step forward, turned her head, and her eyes fell on the man's face. The other half of the long needle went straight into the man's eye socket. A drop of black liquid flowed out very slowly along the edge of the eyeball. Pull out the needle, throw away the cure, throw away the cure again. After 2 consecutive treatments, the man in the felt hat fell down and lost his breath. Sarala? She looked up at the direction where the long needle was flying, kicked off her feet, and flew out. He took 2 steps, then suddenly turned back, grabbed the reporter and ran forward. There's only one person left alive, but don't let anyone kill you. Even though she was holding a person in her hand, Miss Silverdragon's pace was still as fast as a breeze. After running a few steps, a figure suddenly flashed in front of him and shrank into a broken house. It's here. Sarala arrived quickly and kicked in the door directly. The room was empty, with not even a single person there. She looked left and right, suddenly squatted on the ground, raised her fist and struck down. Boom. Ouch. Bah, bah, bah. A big hole opened in the ground, which was obviously a prepared escape route. Sarala punched down, and a retreat appeared. Dirty water splashed all over the room. It seemed that underneath this retreat was the sewer of the royal capital. Huh. Sarala wrinkled her nose and retreated outside. She held up the protective cover in time and was not splashed by the sewage, but the poor reporter was splashed all over. The tragic situation was unbearable to look at. Sarala pinched her nose and endured it, but found that she couldn't bear it anymore, so she had no choice but to be humble and throw in 2 cleaning skills. Carrying the reporter back to the original place, the man in the felt hat had black water flowing across his face, and his face was completely rotten. Oh, I don't know how to play with souls. Sarala muttered, then grabbed the body with the long hands of the summoning mage, and dropped it onto the floating saucer. On one side was the reporter and on the other was the body. They carried it back to the hospital and placed it in front of Greet. Barabala told the story. One died. Hey, you can't blame Sarala. Gretel sweated silently after hearing this. How much the silver dragon loves clean creatures. Let her go into the sewers to catch people. It is better to let her turn the whole capital upside down. Gretel comforted her, sent for Lord Graf, and threw the body and the prisoners directly to him. When it's time to investigate, when it's time to interrogate, it's better to leave these tasks to professionals. Greet himself had a good sleep. When I woke up the next morning, before the operation, Lord Graf stood in front of him seriously. Someone is unfavorable to the hospital. His lordship's face was stern, as if it would crack at any time after applying enough paste. To be precise, it is against you and wants to destroy your reputation. The reporter doesn't know who is behind it. He only guesses that it is a powerful person and wants to continue to investigate. A powerful person? Gretel looked toward the hospital door and curled his lips. Without some power, it was impossible to bring half of the pregnant women in the royal capital to him overnight. He shrugged nonchalantly. Tell the Baroness and ask her to send someone to investigate. Let's do our thing and ignore this mess. Throwing dirty water on him is nothing more than trying to get him away. This approach directly harms the Queen's own interests. In this case, just take the matter to the highest level and let the Queen take care of it. I won't get involved in the fights between your nobles. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's the last 3 days. Don't hold your monthly tickets in your hands anymore. Throw them to me. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 686. Greed handed over the witnesses and turned his back on what was going on outside the window, focusing only on performing a caesarean section. On the other hand, the Queen's clerical lady, Baroness Wittig, carried out the Queen's authorization on the day she received the witness and swept through the royal capital with great fanfare. First, torture the reporter again to confirm his confession. Then take the Queen's guards and the casters of the Royal Mage group to the scene to investigate and trace the clues. At the same time, a group of people were assigned to go to the mothers who were discharged from the hospital yesterday one by one, and ask them why they flocked to the Royal Baby-Friendly Hospital, and followed this line upwards to investigate. Without sparing manpower and magical skills, the mastermind behind the scenes was quickly identified. It's just that the mastermind behind the scenes. From Baroness Wittig to Queen Anne, everyone was speechless. I didn't mean to harm the Queen, Lord Norton, the youngest daughter of the Queen's grandfather Edward II, the son of Princess Margaret, and the 11th heir to the throne, had veins popping up on his face. I just want to try that mage's skills. They said that if that mage is a fake, it's better to get rid of him as soon as possible. Them, Baroness Wittig caught the word keenly. Who are they? Who encouraged you or instigated you to do this? This. Lord Norton rolled his eyes and tried to remember. I forgot, at the banquet 2 days ago, Davina and I were on a date in the garden. I heard them talking, I didn't even know who it was. Baroness Vitegwe had a headache. The Davina he was talking about was the newly married wife of Viscount Linley, and she was quite famous in the royal capital. I would definitely not dare to take the risk of dating this lady. I don't know who is talking about it, but it is probably true. Lord Norton's grandparents are all deceased, and his father, Earl Elster, is an 8th level knight who went to sea with the army to join the war against the glorious Holy See. At this time, it is really difficult to deal with it too seriously. The Queen was speechless for a moment. She looked at the prophecy mage of the Royal Mage group. The mage lowered his gaze, rubbed the crystal ball, and shook his head after a long time. He didn't lie. It's not you. Why did you buy the newspaper and throw dirty water on the hospital? Who sent the person who silenced me? I don't know. Lord Norton died unjustly. The servant did this inexplicably, and I want to know who is behind it. You go home and get grounded. Queen Anne finally patted the armrest of the seat. Waiting for the results of further investigation. Also, after we finish communicating with Master Nordmark, you have to give him an explanation. That evening, Baroness Wittig went to Leo Hospital in person to explain to Greed. We invited Archmage Seymour from the Royal Mage Group and magicians from the Prophecy Department to trace back the clues. There was a hint of exhaustion, guilt, and anger towards the troublemaker between her brows. The clues are very vague, and there is no conclusive evidence. The Queen can only hammer and make them promise not to take action again. After all, they are also big nobles, and they still have the line of succession, so it is difficult to kill them at will. Gretel opened his mouth in surprise. Those who have the right to inherit, no matter whether they are 7th, 8th, or whoever is in line, are they trying to interfere with the Queen's safe delivery without killing them? Even if there is no suspicion, a few should be cut down now to serve as a warning to others. He lowered his head and recited silently, "My vassal's vassal is not my vassal and my vassal's vassal is not my vassal," several times, swallowing all the doubts back in his stomach. Forget it. A country has its own national conditions, and every world has its own customs. Maybe in this world, we just can't cut off a few casually. Besides, even if the Queen makes the wrong decision, it's none of his business. The carnivore planned this. He just wanted to get the authorization for the operation, deliver the baby safely, and retreat safely. Even when it comes to authorization for surgery, you should give it to me if you like, and not push back if you don't want to. Anyway, it's not me, nor the people close to me, who are giving birth, so I need to think of ways and brains to do the surgery, right? Oh, if possible, Pay more for medical expenses. I don't care about these things. He spread his hands indifferently. As long as you don't say hello, just send me so many pregnant women. Although I am very busy, I don't have time to do the research and judgment beforehand, the teaching during the process, and the summary afterwards. Look, he pointed medical records on the table. The surgery was performed yesterday, and until now, the medical records have not been completed. A hint of embarrassment flashed across the Baroness's face. However, the other party does have the qualifications to not care. Yesterday, the maternity and infant hospital discharged 53 women, most of whom had cesarean sections. Mother and baby are safe and nothing is missed. She forced a smile. Don't worry, the Queen has warned them sternly and informed His Excellency Thunder Sword Master. If anyone dares to reach out, the sword of roses and thorns will not spare him. Gretel hee. The Baroness pretended not to see his gaze, lowered her head, and flipped through the medical records on the table. There is a thick pile on the left and a thick pile on the right. In addition to her name, age, and surgical procedures, she also wrote a lot of information that she couldn't understand. The only thing that is certain is that these records should be helpful in improving medical standards. Your Majesty the Master, she tried her best to put on a smile and started the second task of the day. Before coming, the Queen personally told her to comfort the Nordmark mage. After all, he had been tortured inexplicably, and she couldn't give him justice, so she had to give him some compensation. Her Majesty the Queen is very impressed by the results of your work. She sent me here today to ask, is there anything else you are missing? Give benefits? Can you ask for anything you need? Gretel's eyes lit up. Without thinking, he immediately asked for the same thing. First of all, there is a lack of midwives. When I come here, I also hope to popularize safe delivery techniques as much as possible. At least let the midwives know what to pay attention to when delivering babies, and in which cases they need to be converted to cesarean section immediately. At least, let the midwives in the royal capital know what to pay attention to when delivering babies. Midwives training. That's no problem. Baroness Wittig nodded immediately. Who caused the trouble? Who will clean it up? Whoever provoked the Nordmark mage, who used his own power to atone for his sins. Aren't you able to use coercion and inducement to get so many midwives? You use your influence again and let them take turns to come for training. She mentally considered the candidate for the job and agreed immediately. Gretel bent his second finger. Secondly, there is a lack of data storage. The magical images left behind during our examination of the patient are very precious. With these, we can better determine how to treat the Queen. But now, these things cannot be saved. Then what do you need? The best thing is something like a tower spirit. The Baroness's face darkened on the spot. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's the last 2 days, and there are still 146 votes left. I'm crying and stretching out my paws. The cat just hopes to get 1,000 votes and draw a prize next month. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 687. Tailing. Why don't you go and grab it? The Baroness almost blurted out. At the last moment, he bit the tip of his tongue and reluctantly swallowed the words. It hurts. Don't you know how expensive that thing from tailing is? The two core and most valuable parts of a mage tower are the energy pool and the tower spirit. A basic version of the mage tower starts with 50,000 contribution points, of which the tower spirit accounts for 20,000. According to the floating exchange rate of contribution points and gold coins, it is about 80,000 gold coins. That's it? Anyone who wants to buy it can buy it immediately. However, during such a pause, he saw Gretel lowering his head slightly and arranging a row of chips on the table. Square, half the size of a palm, cut thinly and flatly, with subtle brilliance faintly flowing on it. You can tell at a glance that it must be produced by the alchemy workshop, and it can never be made anywhere else. Gretel picked up a piece, and sent out the magic power slightly, and a light and shadow immediately appeared on the chip. Greet pointed to the light and shadow, with a solemn face. This is the intrauterine ultrasound image of a pregnant woman. Yesterday he adjusted the angle of light and shadow and pointed out the details to the Baroness one by one. From this image, we can see the position of the fetus, head up or feet up, facing the abdomen or back, whether the umbilical cord is around the neck, whether the placenta is previa, whether the amniotic fluid is turbid. The Baroness looked confused and could only recognize these lights and shadows, which were somewhat similar to the lights and shadows inspired by the Nordmark mage when they examined the queen. At that time, the master did make a similar judgment through these lights and shadows. She nodded politely. Greet said seriously. However, what each situation means, how it will develop in the future, and how to deal with it, we still need to accumulate enough experience to make better judgments. And the first step in accumulating experience is to record these things. As he spoke, he pushed over a medical record. The Baroness opened it and read it carefully, and found that the treatment methods inside were indeed based on a summary of the image content. She reached out and touched the chip. Then, this. The fingertips touched lightly and then paused. Gretel smiled bitterly. The alchemy workshop quoted 10 contribution points per piece. I once bought hundreds of them at once, and they refused to give them any cheaper. Later, I connected the box to the tower spirit, and I saved this money. The Baroness let out a long breath. In this way, if the conditions of every mother in the Royal Maternity and Infant Hospital were recorded, the number of microchips required would be extremely huge. Mage Nordmark wants a tower spirit. It seems like he wants to save money rather than spending money indiscriminately. Besides, I don't want to have one. Gretel looked directly at the Baroness with serious eyes. In the Baroness's eyes, it seemed that she was a little aggrieved. You can borrow one or rent one. When I go back to Nevis, I can just take the information with me. This can always be done, right? Can the royal family help mediate or provide a guarantee? This request sounds much more reliable. Although Baroness White didn't know whether the Magic Council could lend or rent something like a tower spirit to outsiders, but it was still better than asking the royal family to buy one for him. In that case, I'll give it a try. She put her hand on the table and stood up gracefully. I may not succeed, but I will try my best. Greet sent her out with gratitude on her face. Hey, I don't know how much money I can make from this flying knife trip, whether it's enough to buy a tower spirit. Even if it's not enough, at least it can be a temporary one. Let's use it for a while first. Baroness Wittig drove straight to the Royal Mage Corps and found the head of the group, Archmage Seymour. Hearing her request to borrow or rent a tower spirit, the Archmage was shocked and rejected it without thinking. Tower spirit? Are you kidding? When have you ever heard of such a thing being rented out separately? If there is a mage tower, there is a tower spirit. Without a mage tower, where would the tower spirit come from? But the Nordmark mage said that for medical research needs, he hopes to borrow one for a while. The Archmage was silent for a moment. He lowered his head and thought for a moment, then stood up. I'll go ask. Baroness. I don't have it if I borrow it. If Master Nordmark borrows it, can I ask? You treat them too differently. Is it closed to people outside the Magic Council, or does this Nordmark mage enjoy special treatment in the council? She sat in the reception room, patiently waiting for the outcome of the Archmage's communication. Since the Archmage said this, it is likely that the king does not have any spare tower spirits, or even if he does, they are not in his hands. Whether you can get it or not depends on whether Nevis provides it. A communication line has been maintained for a long time between the Great Magic Tower in the royal capital and the Babel Tower in the Parliament to deliver emergency messages. Of course, you can sometimes use this line for non-urgent messages, but you have to pay a high fee. Otherwise, it is not enough to offset the extremely high energy cost of transmitting messages. Greet's matter is between whether he can charge money or not. However, Master Seymour did not consider the money issue and directly opened the line and conveyed the demand. After a while, he came out with a roll of parchment and sat in front of the Baroness. Nevis asked how much the royal family is willing to pay for Master Nordmark to diagnose and treat the Queen. This issue has always been vague on both the royal family and the Magic Council. After all, both parties are persons of high status. The direct inquiry by the Parliament showed that they did not believe that the royal family would be generous. The royal family made a direct quotation. Please, when the Queen asks her subjects to do something and then gives them money, that is called a reward, not remuneration. Giving money directly without asking someone is too disrespectful. I just asked for money on the spot after eating the last meal but not the next meal. However, the Baroness estimated that if it was less than 10,000 to 20,000 gold coins, the royal family would not be able to afford it. This money includes the cost of the surgery, the remuneration for bringing the team all the way here, and the remuneration for staying in the royal capital for 3 months. What's more, the Queen's net worth is too small, and outsiders will say that the royal family is stingy. This amount of money is too much to buy a tower. I want to rent a tower. Although the Baroness does not know the cost of renting a tower, renting it for 3 months is probably more than enough. An incredible thought arose in her mind, and she said in surprise. What do you mean? The idea from Nevis is that since he wants it, several companies can work together to see if they can sell it to him directly. Archmage Seymour's eyes were also a little dazed, but he still answered smoothly. Except a few more guests who can pay in the royal capital, teach other spellcasters, and write papers and so on. Add in a few aspects, and he will contribute some of it himself to see if he can make up enough. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Everyone is so helpful. Yesterday I got 87 monthly tickets. I see that I am very close to 1,000. I am so grateful. There are so few new subscriptions. Has everyone gone to see Ukraine? It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 688. Baroness White walked out of the Mage Tower in a trance. Okay, she thought, now her task becomes, how to help the Mage Nordmark get another 40,000 gold coins. According to Archmage Seymour's reply, the Magic Council can probably provide 1/4 of the credit limit. In other words, the council felt that the Nordmark mage could repay the 20,000 gold coins within a reasonable time. The Queen will pay 20,000 for the remaining part, and there will be another 40,000 to find a way to get it from other sources. There is no need to pay, as long as the other party's willingness and ability to pay are confirmed. The Parliament said that the Tower Spirit can be delivered at any time. By the way, is this Nordmark mage really that high in authority and importance in the Parliament? The Baroness didn't know that as early as last year, Greed had borrowed an empty tower from Black Crow Swamp in order to demonstrate the transmission model of infectious diseases and the role of vaccines. And it burned out after just playing with it. Not only was it burned, but he was not asked to pay for it. The Archmage of Black Crow Swamp took care of it for him. If you can get one, in Greed's opinion, it's only a matter of time before you get the second one. Although she did not know this information, the Baroness secretly speculated on the tone of Archmage Seymour, and also knew that the Tower Spirit was waving from the front. The council had already given in to this extent, so she had to handle this matter even more beautifully. Well, the Lord who caused trouble yesterday can probably get away with it, but it's only a few thousand gold coins. Who will pay for the other money? There should be nobles and wealthy businessmen in the royal capital, right? When she came to greet with feedback from the council and her own questions, she got a natural answer. I am in Nevis. The cost of a caesarean section is about 2,000 gold coins. I can do 5 or 6 in a month. Of course, it is now paid for by the council's insurance premiums, and in fact it does not receive that much money, and it has to be divided up and down the hospital. There is no need to tell the Baroness any more about these things. There should be no fewer wealthy people in the royal capital than in Nevis, right? There is always demand. Also, over at the temple, if you want to learn this kind of technology, you can't afford to be penniless. Baroness Vitegwe. Okay, be cruel. She turned and left. Looking for nobles, right? Looking for someone who is willing to pay for the mother, right? Within 3 months, we must find at least 10 of them. We can't embarrass the royal capital in front of the people of Nevis, right? Give it to me. As a clerical lady and the Queen's close assistant, the Baroness knows everything about the aristocracy in the royal capital. After communicating with the Queen first, confirm the maximum amount the royal family is willing to pay, and then start thinking about what are the important nobles in the royal capital. Which aristocratic ladies are relatively advanced in pregnancy and may give birth within 3 months? Which nobles are willing to spend money for their wives, and which noble ladies have rich dowries themselves and can afford 2,000 gold coins? After visiting a few random places and attending 2 banquets, I received 3 intentions. They are all due in the near future, within 10 days or a month. In addition, there are at least 7 or 8 noble ladies who have not yet matured, but are very interested. Half done. The Baroness breathed a sigh of relief and found 2 more newspapers to release the news and asked them to send people to the hospital to inquire, collect, and publish the news. She can deal with nobles, especially high-ranking nobles, but merchants are exempted. Once it's published in the newspaper, let them read it themselves. After finishing all these social tasks, Baroness Vitegwe breathed a long sigh of relief, feeling that her whole body was so tired that she was about to fall apart. However, this was not over yet. The next day, she had to go to the main temple of the spring water goddess in the capital to visit the chief priest. Those rough guys at the God of War temple probably aren't interested in caesarean section or anything like that. Moreover, their traditional business areas do not include this area. The Church of Nature is a bunch of poor people, and they probably can't squeeze out any oil. Besides, Master Nordmark himself is also a deist priest. He will probably teach for free, and then happily go with those people to help the poor. The magicians are also his own, so he probably doesn't need to be a middleman. The only person left who can be used as a target for money is you, Spring Water Temple. What? 20,000 gold coins, or 5,000 contribution points. The chief priest couldn't believe his ears. His white eyebrows suddenly stood up, and a few long hairs at the ends of his eyebrows almost flew out. Do you know how much the temple's annual income is? Do you know how much donations the temple receives throughout the year from nobles and wealthy businessmen, that is, people who can afford to buy magical arts? Learning to have a caesarean section costs 20,000 gold coins, or 5,000 contribution points. Using contribution points to calculate the price makes him even more annoyed. This means that the Spring Water Temple needs to lower its noble head, trade with the Magic Council, and use their standards to measure those things. Valuable objects. Why don't you go grab that Nordmark mage? By the way, why didn't he come directly to talk? Send the Baroness over. Oh, please don't say that. The Baroness spread out her silk fan and fanned her chest, her eyes moving. This is not the price he offered. To be honest, if he is willing to offer a price, that is a good thing. If he is not willing to offer a price, it will be more troublesome. You don't want him to teach as many students as he wants, As many as he wants. You can teach for as long as you want, right? The chief priest's face darkened. The Baroness leaned back slightly and raised the corners of her lips. I have asked before that the first batch of spellcasters who learn from him will have at least 1 year to complete their studies. As for whether their level will be high enough after they complete their studies, and whether they can leave the oak forest and teach students on their own. She spread her palms. Without waiting for the chief priest to speak, with a smile, he leisurely delivered the decisive blow. Besides, Her Majesty the Queen is still young, so it is impossible for her to have only one child. I think it is unlikely that Master Nordmark will come to the royal capital to stay for 3 months at a time. The implication is that after you learn how to do it, won't all the many nobles and needs in the royal capital belong to you? Now just pay a little cost. After the cost has been spent, the other party will naturally have to teach him well. The sooner he can learn, the sooner he can monopolize the needs of the royal capital. Speaking from the opposite direction, Her Majesty the Queen did not go to the Spring Temple to give birth, but came all the way from Nevis to find a magician. What a huge blow to the reputation of the Spring Temple. Even if it is to recover this loss of reputation, 20,000 gold coins, is that a big deal? The chief priest thought for a moment, then his raised white eyebrows slowly flattened, and the long hairs at the ends of his eyebrows also slowly fell down. He took a breath and lowered his voice. So, how many people can be guaranteed in the church from Master Nordmark? I'll talk about this. The Baroness immediately took care of everything. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Please give me the last monthly pass for these 2 days and the guaranteed monthly pass for next month. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 689. So I'm going to have a tower spirit. Greet was happy at first, and then surprised. Of course, this surprise cannot be expressed directly in front of the Baroness. So I took on a loan of 20,000 gold coins. Furthermore, with these 20,000 gold coins, don't you expect to use the Queen's treatment fees, the treatment fees of major clients of the maternity and infant hospital, and the training fees of the spring water temple to repay the debt? Why are there people in the parliament who want to buy and sell by force? Hey, forget it, don't worry about this anymore. The left and right councils did not say when the 20,000 gold coins, or 5,000 contribution points, would be repaid, nor did they specify the loan interest rate, so they could shamelessly treat it as an interest-free loan. If they want to enforce it, I'll go find the teacher for support. Of course, besides this, there are other things that worry Gretel. Mainly financial pressure. The newly hired midwives, nurses, and support staff should at least be paid their wages, right? Spellcasters, there is no need to pay for their salary. Gretel can now shamelessly say, what kind of salary do you need to learn a craft? But for daily expenses, such as lunch, afternoon tea, etc., the hospital will not pay for it. So let them bring their own? Not to mention, as the number of operations increases, logistical expenses, such as charcoal water purification, bed sheets and bedding, etc., are also increasing significantly. And this money can only be earned by yourself. The Queen has already paid 20,000 gold coins in one lump sum. Regardless of the payment method, it is basically a no-brainer to expect her to increase funding for the hospital. Greet had no choice but to go to the former Lord Dean. Although Gretel gained theoretical control of the maternity and infant hospital, he didn't take too much care. The operation of the hospital, so far, still depends on the diligent support of this lord. Want to place an ad in the newspaper? Yes, Greet spread his hands. Let's just say we plan to start a new medical experiment to compare labor analgesia with natural labor without analgesia. Well, if you only require analgesia during the second stage of labor, which is when the contractions are the most intensive and painful, the casting fee can be as low as 10 gold coins. If full analgesia is required, the fee is 100 gold coins. Then, for women participating in this program, if the condition progresses to the point where a cesarean section is necessary, the hospital can waive the cost of the surgery. Lord Graf brushed the record. After remembering this sentence, the tip of the pen paused, and he raised his head to look at Gretel, but stopped talking. Forget it, you are doing the surgery, you are also throwing away the magical healing skills, you can skip it if you want. So that's what you need. I need precise placement. Greet only knows this about advertising. The target group is probably families who are willing to pay about 10 gold coins to 100 gold coins for pregnant women to give birth. I don't know which newspapers or other channels can accurately reach this group of people. I leave it to you. Also, I'm counting on you to improve the hospital's financial situation. Lord Graf took the order and left. It has to be said that this lord is indeed deeply rooted in the royal capital, and can get through any road up or down. From the third day after he released the news, pregnant women from middle-class and upper-middle-class families came to the hospital one after another. Padma Stout held her sister's hand and slowly walked into the small white building, frowning slightly. This small building looks neat and clean from the outside, which makes people feel good about it, but there is a strange smell inside. Cold, hard, even a little pungent. "Madam, this is the smell of disinfectant." The nurse in charge of receiving her noticed her words and immediately explained. Master Nordmark's research results show that regular disinfection with disinfectant can reduce infection and reduce the occurrence of puerperal fever. Rooms, corridors, and even all instruments in the hospital will be regularly sprayed and wiped with it. Oh well. For your own safety, let the scent of disinfectant replace the scent of flowers you are familiar with and love. Padma slowly walked into ward number 3, lay down on the bed, and decided to take a break while the contractions were not too severe. As soon as I closed my eyes, I was exploded by a scream. Ah! Scared to death. The heart rate doubles directly. Padma sat up straight, pressing her hand against her racing heart. On the sofa next to the bed, my sister Licky had jumped up and rushed to the door. As soon as the door was opened, a sharp scream immediately came in through the crack of the door. Ah, it hurts me so much, please let me do it, let me do it dash. Madam, your current situation does not meet the indications for cesarean section. A young woman's voice responded to her. Calmly, as if it was just a routine matter. Please be patient a little longer and don't waste your energy at this stage. The cervix has been opened for 7 fingers, and you can give birth in a few hours. I don't want, please let me have an autopsy, or you can give me painless surgery, please dash. Madam, when you were admitted to the hospital, your family only paid for 1 hour of analgesia, which has been used up according to your request. Do you want to continue paying this? Padma became curious, walked out of the ward slowly, leaned against the door frame and watched. Scanning left and right, several doors opened one after another, and more than one pregnant woman or family member of a pregnant woman poked her head out to take a look. In the corridor, a disheveled pregnant woman with disheveled hair turned her back to her. She was holding on to another old woman and trying to breathe in. Her body was almost soft to the ground. Please. Please. Please give me pain relief, I'm going to die from the pain. Please dash. Isn't the money already paid? A trace of disgust flashed across the face of the old woman she was holding, and she shook her off hard. It's all because you couldn't help it, so you used it in advance. After you used it, you just endured it? My son works hard at sea, how much money can he earn in a year? How easy is it for the family to come up with 10 gold coins? The pregnant woman was interrupted after saying one word. The severe pain made her unable to even support her body, and she slowly knelt on the ground. I have a dowry, After I give birth, I will go back and borrow money from my parents' family, please use it for me first. I really can't bear it anymore, I really can't do it anymore. No matter how hard-hearted a person is, seeing her kneeling down and begging like this will make his heart soften. At least Padma was like this. If she hadn't been in labor herself, she would have wanted to go up and help the woman in labor and comfort her. Sit down inside first. The ground is too cold and it will hurt your body. Your dowry doesn't belong to the family. If you go to borrow money, you don't want the family to repay it. However, the old woman remained unmoved. She put her hands on her hips and spoke forcefully. Who doesn't feel the pain when a woman gives birth? Generations of our ancestors have experienced pain like this. You are so delicate, so why do you need pain relief? If this family could not guarantee that nothing would happen, who would have spent such a large sum of money to send you in? Padma closed her eyes slightly. Women do not have their own property or income, so they are bullied like this. Just as he was thinking this, a man rushed out from the ward next to him and pointed at the young woman who was arranging analgesia for pregnant women. Does your hospital have no mercy? Seeing that she is in such pain, why don't you give her any pain relief? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Today I accompanied the old man to the hospital for medical treatment. I was a few minutes late. I'm sorry. Thanks to Ed for the 1,500 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 690. Who is blaming the hospital? Padma held onto the door frame and looked around. The person who spoke angrily was a young girl in her 20s, wearing a straight light gray dress and a pair of square-rimmed glasses. He raised his hand and pointed to the opposite side. There were faint traces of ink on the fingertips and side knuckles. Do you often work with words? Clerk, tutor, or low-level spellcaster? Padma thought to herself. Opposite the girl with glasses, the girl taking care of the mother adjusted her dress and raised her chin high. Because she is in pain, do you need to give her pain relief? Have you paid for it? I told you that you have to pay when you were admitted to the hospital, didn't you know? Then you can just watch her hurt like this. The girl with glasses became even more angry. It's obviously just a matter of effort. As a healer, as a spellcaster who spreads the queen's favor and takes care of the mother, don't you have any sympathy for the mother who is also a woman? The girl's face turned red. She clenched her hands tightly and then released them and clenched them tightly again. The light on her fingertips pulsed faintly. Just as he was trying not to slap him, a bright voice suddenly sounded at the end of the corridor. What happened? Joanna. The girl rushed over aggrievedly and explained the matter in a few words. Joanna slowly approached while listened to the whole story, stretched out her hand to scoop it up, and picked up the woman who had fallen limply on the ground. Come, go back to the room and lie down first. It will make you feel more comfortable, she said softly, without using any force on her hands, and she had already picked up the mother like a doll. Let me take a look at your situation. Well, your heartbeat is okay, your blood pressure is not too high, and your fetal heart rate. Her eyes moved and scanned the light screens on the bedside. The fetal heart rate is also okay. Don't be afraid, everything is normal. If you hold on for a few more hours, you will give birth soon. A clear voice spread from the ward to the corridor. The corridor was quiet except for the brisk footsteps of the nurses. Padma breathed a sigh of relief, supported her sister and was about to turn around and go back to the room when she heard a second scream from the ward. Ah! Don't be nervous, adjust your breathing, and don't waste your energy. Joanna's voice sounded at the right time. Come on, follow my command and breathe, 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 breathe. Can't you give her pain relief? The girl with glasses spoke angrily again. Joanna ignored her and concentrated on guiding the pregnant woman's breathing in the ward. After a long while, he got up and came out, closing the door half closed. You ask me why I didn't give her pain relief. The level 5 priest of the natural god religion looked solemn. On her cheeks, 3 red marks were dignified and mysterious, adding a bit of majesty to her. The girl with glasses shrank subconsciously, then took a step forward and raised her voice even more. Yes. She is in so much pain, and you don't care whether she lives or not. First of all, no one cares about her life or death, Joanna said calmly. She glanced over the faces of several pregnant women who were still in good condition and in the mood to watch, and nodded slightly to them. As soon as I arrived, I confirmed that her condition was quite good and she should be able to give birth naturally. If the condition worsened and she could only have a cesarean section, someone would naturally send her there. But she's in such pain. You just see money. So what? Joanna replied quietly. The spells of spellcasters are always limited, so they must be used in more important places. Such as exploration, such as treatment after cesarean section. Pain relief and other less urgent needs can always be put in the back row. Unlimited satisfaction of the patient's needs will, in the end, only wear down the power of the spellcaster. Even their nature god order, which serves poor people on a daily basis, must know how to control their own power. When supply is insufficient and demand is great, how these less urgent needs are distributed follows a different set of rules. For example, money, power, or some things that cannot be exchanged for money or power. And the hospital has waived a lot of fees. Joanna's bright eyes turned slightly and stared at the girl with glasses. The inspection just now, 3 first-level spells, the standard price is 150 gold coins, we did not charge a single copper coin. If it develops to the point where a cesarean section is required, the hospital will waive the 2,000 gold coins. Her voice was calm, and she did not raise her voice just because she was confident. As she made her statement, the nurses, midwives and family members of the pregnant women in the corridor also began to whisper. It seems so. A lot has indeed been waived. If every item had to be charged, our family would really have a hard time paying. Thousands of gold coins have been waived, so there is no reason to spend tens of them, so, do you really follow the rules? All kinds of strange looks were directed at the girl with glasses. The girl was ashamed and angry, her cheeks were red, she suddenly turned her head and ran out like the wind. I'm so angry. At the regular meeting that afternoon, she complained to the editor-in-chief, fellow editors, and reporters with a face full of grievance. They don't care about these mothers at all. I said a few words, and then they came back with a lot of money. Aren't they all working with the money given by the Queen? Why should they charge extra money? I must expose them. I will write a big article. I'm afraid I won't be able to write this manuscript. Across the conference table, a gray-haired old editor pushed up his tortoise-shell glasses and said in a deep voice. There are no free spells, and spellcasters have no obligation to cast spells for free. This is the consensus of everyone, at least, all spellcasters. Miss Brad, I'm afraid it won't be easy for you to challenge this consensus. 3 or 5 editors and reporters nodded at the same time. Spellcasters, this is one of the most noble people in the kingdom. They form a group that even the Queen cannot ignore. Want to write a manuscript to accuse them? There is no telling how many people will find the manuscript ridiculous. If this manuscript becomes a big deal, any group of spellcasters may cause trouble for them. Miss Braid pursed her lips and her eyes flickered behind the lenses of her spectacles. While he was struggling with how to continue persuading, the editor-in-chief suddenly coughed and knocked on the table. It may not be impossible. Miss Brad, what is the origin of the mother you saw? She is the wife of a Royal Navy officer. Her husband is on a mission at sea, the girl with glasses answered immediately. The editor-in-chief lowered his head and thought for a moment, then gave a short laugh. You go ahead and write it, and show it to me when you're done. By the way, the focus is on her husband fighting for the Queen, and his wife in the Queen's hospital, and the healers are watching her suffer. Editor-in-chief. Mr. Kreiser. How do you convince others? What if some temple knocks on your door? Several editors and reporters said at the same time. The editor-in-chief smiled confidently. You go find a painter and draw things. The picture must be impactful. Remember the previous painting, Hold a Corpse for Price? Just draw it in that direction. Find the best painter. Miss Braid nodded hesitantly. The editor-in-chief raised his head and looked around. As for someone taking revenge, what are you afraid of? How many times has our newspaper changed its name and moved its house? As long as the newspaper sells well, as long as it attracts enough attention, there will be a new address and everything will be possible. Huh, a big boss asked for a manuscript in this area before, but I was worried about the fact that it had no impact. This Miss Brad is really spiritual and should be cultivated. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Tomorrow is March 1st, so remember to give me your guaranteed monthly pass. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 691. There is the editor-in-chief who makes the final decision, and there is the reporter who writes brilliantly. The latest report from the Royal Maternity and Infant Hospital immediately made the front page of Banana Daily the next day. The first line of title, with the font maximized, is eye-catching. Pregnant woman in labor is in extreme pain and begs on her knees, but the cold-blooded hospital ignores her. Below the title, instead of getting into the main topic, there is a cartoon. In the cartoon, the mother is disheveled, kneeling on her knees, holding her belly and begging, looking like she is about to collapse. Opposite the mother, there was a spellcaster wearing a robe, with a fat head, big ears, and a prominent chest and belly. The left hand holds the money bag high, as if it is shaking, and the right hand makes a casting motion, with a circle of light emitting from the palm, pointing at the money bag. Above the caster's head, a line is circled with bubbles, which is shocking. No coins, no treatment. Looking at the text below the comic, the writing is even more powerful, blaming Fang Qiu. The author poured all his righteous anger into the text and poured it into the Royal Maternity and Infant Hospital. Growing up, in my mind, healers are compassionate and kind beings. They bring the power given by gods to the world, save lives, heal diseases, and soothe pain. Whenever we suffer from diseases, whenever you see a healer, you see hope. However, I never dared to imagine that there could be such a cold-blooded healer who could stand by and ignore the pain of patients. Let the mother writhe in pain, kneel on the ground and scream, and still claim, if you don't pay, there will be no analgesia spell. It's simply appalling. When you were studying in the temple, when you understood the blessings of the gods, do you still remember the oaths you swore? What's more, such a cold-blooded thing actually happened at the Royal Maternity and Infant Hospital. The woman who was wailing in pain, but ignored by the hospital, was the wife of a naval officer. Her husband was at sea fighting for the Queen. The Queen's mercy and favor have been swallowed up by them. Even the officers of the Royal Navy and the families of those who shed blood and died for the Queen cannot be taken care of. The daily circulation number of Banana Daily is about 1,000, and its distribution targets are mainly small workshop owners, small vendors, and taverns. In short, it is aimed at readers who are somewhat literate and can read newspapers, but are not too impatient to read high-end articles. The group is relatively fixed. However, this time, after 1,000 copies, it was soon 1,000 copies again. Then, this article was continuously reprinted, and it was published in serious newspapers such as the Courier and Current Affairs News, and down to unscrupulous newspapers such as Nanhai Daily and Hot Girl, and even published in Hwaja News. Tabloids. Well done, Miss Brad. The editor-in-chief pushed a money bag over with appreciation. What we, Banana Daily, need is a young lady like you who is flexible and has a sense of justice. From today on, you have been promoted to a formal editor, with a monthly salary of 1 gold coin, plus bonuses for editing and editing. Come on, this is your bonus. Thank you, Editor-in-Chief. I am just a newbie in this industry, and I still have a lot to learn from you. The girl with glasses proudly accepted the purse and began to pack her desk under the envious eyes of her colleagues. After the door was closed, the editor-in-chief touched his pocket proudly, and twirled the hard card in his pocket with his fingers. Well, that gentleman seems to be very satisfied with his report. By the way, it seems it's time for the newspaper to move again. Moving tomorrow. The Banana Daily article, as well as various reprints, quickly reached the desks of interested people. In the Spring Temple, His Excellency the priest tapped the current news on the table and frowned slightly. What is this? Who did it? We are still investigating, Your Excellency. His student, 7th level priest Mullendur, stood across from the desk and replied respectfully. These reports, should we suppress them? After all, some of us are studying in the hospital, and if we allow this kind of thinking to spread, some people will accuse us in the future of not saving our lives. Let's take a look at the situation first. The chief priest's heart bled when he thought of the 20,000 gold coins, and his heart bled even more when he thought that the queen bypassed them and specially invited a magician to take care of the childbirth. The action of tapping the newspaper was a little faster without realizing it. They haven't asked for help yet, so what's the point of just suppressing the news? Besides, the spring water temple has been majestic for thousands of years, and no one dares to block the entrance of the temple and call us cold-blooded without treatment. Priest Dewar quietly retreated. Most of the other forces, such as the Temple of the God of War and certain great nobles, adopted a temporary onlooker strategy. Only Baroness Wittig hurried to the hospital with a stack of newspapers. Someone is attacking me again. Greet stroked the report on the paper, slightly lost in thought. The Baroness said anxiously. You're still in a daze. It's okay, Gretel smiled and reassured her. In his opinion, this kind of attack is really nothing. At the very least, the mother gave birth safely and did not jump off the building in the hospital due to excessive pain. At the very least, no one took the most shocking pictures and published them everywhere in newspapers and on the internet. At the very least, no one will occupy the emergency hall of your hospital carrying corpses, drawing circles, and burning paper money. At the very least, if there is no strict accountability from the superior department, even if you are not at fault, you will be asked to pay tens of millions and the licenses of 2 doctors will be revoked. It was just a few big newspapers and tabloids circulating, and it was an unknown number of levels lower than the intensity of the previous life. This level of attack gave him enough time to think while sighing. How to fight back? How to clear your name? Or even, how to dig out the mastermind behind the scenes and directly strike back? What are you laughing at? Speak quickly, the Baroness was about to slam the table. If it weren't for the fact that the other party was a spellcaster and couldn't beat him, I really wanted to slap him on the head with a newspaper. I got news that in the military club these days, someone is banging the table and scolding you every day. If you don't think of a way, watch out for them to come and smash your hospital. Greet was finally surprised. However, what he said made the Baroness choke in her chest and almost fainted. What? The army can also come to the door to cause trouble? The army does not need military orders to leave camp, mobilize, and execute orders. Is the military discipline of the Queen's army so poor? What about when they're on vacation? I disobey military orders and hit the hospital door to door. Does that mean I can fight back indefinitely? You're just kidding. Don't worry, I've already made preparations. I'm just waiting for an opportunity to make things worse and counterattack beautifully. Asking for a monthly ticket. Looking for a guaranteed monthly ticket for March. So far, there are only 26 pictures, and 3 of them are my own, which is heartbreaking. None of you love me anymore.